This explainer. Picture this. It's 2 a.m. Your body is just absolutely begging for sleep, but your mind? Well, your mind has decided to run a full marathon. There's this very specific type of exhaustion that comes from this, and honestly, we don't even have a great everyday word for it, yet millions of us go through it every single night. You're lying there, you're finally about to drift off, and then, boom, your brain clocks in for a night shift.
Suddenly, a completely mundane conversation from like Tuesday afternoon just pops into your head. You start replaying every single word, analyzing the other person's facial expressions, obsessing over every tiny little detail. And right on cue, that deeply familiar thought hits you. Man, I should have said that differently. Before you know it, you're wide awake, crafting 10 different versions of a situation that is probably never going to happen again. It's painful, it's exhausting, and trust me, you are definitely not the only one doing it.
You know what the most frustrating part is? You know you're overthinking. You're fully aware that it doesn't make logical sense, but you just cannot flip the switch to turn it off. It literally feels like having 50 browser tabs open in your brain all at once, and every single one of them is blasting loud music at max volume. And look, people love to give you that super unhelpful advice, right? Just relax, or hey, stop thinking so much. But here's the thing. Having a mind without an off switch is actually a sign of deep intelligence. People who overthink like this are often incredibly emotionally aware. They're brilliant at reading the room. But that exact same gift, it's a really heavy burden to carry. It drains you completely because the line between deep insight and self-destruction is way, way thinner than we realize.
So let's look at the actual science behind this, because to fix a problem, we need to know what we're actually dealing with. Psychologists do not just brush this off as simple overthinking. They use a very specific clinical term for it, maladaptive rumination. This happens when your mind gets totally trapped in repetitive thought cycles. You just endlessly loop the same ideas, especially when it comes to uncertainty or painful memories or really complicated social interactions. People might tell you you're just being too sensitive, but actual research from places like Yale and the University of Michigan tells a totally different story. Chronic rumination is not a sign of weakness. It actually stems from a nervous system that works like a highly advanced radar, one that is incredibly skilled at recognizing patterns. The catch is just that your internal radar is broken in one specific way. It never receives the all-clear signal.
What's really fascinating is the biological tug-of-war happening inside your head right now. From a neuroscience standpoint, you've basically got two main players going at it. On one side, you have your prefrontal cortex. That's your logical center. It plans things out, it logically assesses safety. In a calm brain, it's the thing that shuts off your internal alarm system. But during one of these overthinking spirals, it gets completely hijacked and dragged down by something called the default mode network, or the DMN. The DMN forces your brain into these endless, looping internal conversations. The logical center basically loses its grip on the steering wheel, and the result is a brain that just refuses to go offline. You're literally spending all your energy replaying yesterday while bracing for a tomorrow that hasn't even happened yet.
To really grasp how physically exhausting this biological process is, I want you to imagine sitting inside a gorgeous, incredibly powerful Ferrari. It has this top-of-the-line, precision-engineered engine, but the car is stuck in neutral, and your foot is just glued to the gas pedal, flooring it. The engine is absolutely screaming, it's burning through fuel like crazy, but you are not moving forward a single inch. That immense waste of energy, all that heat and noise without any actual forward momentum, that is exactly what maladaptive rumination feels like to your body. Which obviously brings us to a huge question. Why on earth would an intelligent, capable brain willingly put itself through this kind of torture? Why burn all that premium fuel just to sit in neutral? Well, the answer to this is fascinating. And honestly, it's a little heartbreaking because it means we have to look backward.
Psychologists have found that this habit almost always takes root way earlier in life. Think back for a second to your own childhood. Did you grow up in a house that felt, well, unpredictable? Maybe the adults around you had moods that flipped like a light switch? Or maybe tiny everyday mistakes were met with really harsh criticism or punishments that felt massive to you as a kid. A child's developing brain adapts to that kind of environment by learning one very clear survival rule. I must predict everything. If you could predict your parents' mood just by the sound of their footsteps or read their face before they even open their mouth, you could keep yourself safe.
So here is the absolute game changer, the big takeaway I want you to remember. Overthinking isn't a personality defect. It's an adaptation. It's the direct result of a highly intelligent, deeply sensitive nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do, which is to aggressively scan the horizon for danger to keep you safe. Your brain is not trying to torture you. It's not keeping you awake at night just to be a jerk. It is fiercely trying to protect you. It's just doing its job a little too well.
Now, we do need to make an important distinction here because not all overthinking is created equal. Understanding the difference is your ticket out of the trap. Psychology essentially splits this into two categories. First up, we have reflective rumination. This is the good kind. It's inward-looking, it helps you process your emotions, it builds self-awareness. Asking yourself, hey, why did I react that way today? So you can learn from it. That's incredibly healthy. But then we have brooding rumination. This is the dangerous one. With brooding, you aren't looking for a solution. You're just trapped inside the problem. You're replaying the moment not to learn anything, but to punish yourself and just relive the pain over and over.
And when that brooding habit spirals out of control, it starts doing real, tangible damage to your life. The cost of brooding is incredibly high. It literally steals your sleep. It creates this profound analysis paralysis, where you overexamine every single possible outcome until you are literally frozen, unable to make even a basic decision. And it absolutely fuels social anxiety, leaving you terrified of saying the wrong thing or being judged. The scariest part is how quietly it happens. We drift from healthy reflection straight into toxic brooding without even realizing we've crossed the line.
So why is it so incredibly easy to slip into that spiral? Well, it's because thinking feels productive. When you're worrying, your brain feels busy. It feels active and deeply engaged. Psychologists call this the illusion of mental progress. You genuinely feel like you are actively solving a problem just by worrying about it. But the reality, you're right back in that Ferrari in neutral. You're sprinting on a mental treadmill, burning massive amounts of energy, but going absolutely nowhere.
And here's a piece of neuroscience that might completely blow your mind and change how you see your anxiety. Why is it so hard to just stop? Because your brain is literally rewarding you for overthinking. We always think of dopamine as this feel-good reward chemical, right? But your brain also pumps out dopamine during problem solving, even if that problem only exists in your imagination. Here's the loop. Step 1, you replay a painful scenario. Step 2, your brain pats itself on the back and gives you a little hit of dopamine for working on the problem. Step 3, that chemical addiction loop gets heavily reinforced. It is no different than mindlessly scrolling on your phone. The more you overthink, the more your brain chemically craves overthinking. And that is exactly why telling an overthinker to just relax is literally the worst advice ever. You're fighting a chemically reinforced system.
Taking back control, breaking the cycle of maladaptive rumination.
So, now that we know what we're up against, how do we actually break out of this? Therapists who specialize in this kind of anxiety don't try to just eliminate your thoughts, because that's literally impossible. Instead, they give you tools to change how you interact with those thoughts. And the first really powerful technique for this is called cognitive diffusion. Think of your intrusive thoughts like wearing a virtual reality headset. When you have it strapped to your face, everything inside that digital world feels 100% real. Your heart starts racing, your palms get sweaty. Cognitive diffusion is the mental act of reaching up and pulling that VR headset off. It's having that sudden realization of, oh wait, this is just a mental movie. It's not actually happening right now. You are training yourself to observe your thoughts from the outside rather than drowning inside them.
Let's look at exactly how you'd use that in real life. Let's say you make a mistake and your brain says, I am a failure. That internalizes the pain. Instead, you take off the VR headset and you rephrase it. You say to yourself, I am having the thought that I am a failure. I know, it sounds like this tiny, almost silly little change in words, but to your nervous system, it is massive. That tiny little shift creates instant psychological distance. It yanks your brain activity right out of the emotional panic center and hands the keys back to your logical prefrontal cortex. You are no longer in the rushing river. You're standing on the shore, just watching the thought float on by.
Another absolute game changer is updating your nervous system's sense of safety in the moment. Remember, overthinking happens because your body physically believes there is a threat in the room with you. You have to speak to it in a physical language. So, when that familiar spiral starts, I want you to stop, slow right down, and use sensory grounding. Look around the room right now and deliberately call out 5 things you can see. Then reach out and feel the texture of 4 things you can physically touch. Get quiet and listen for 3 things you can hear. Try to find 2 things you can smell. And finally, focus on 1 thing you can taste. Why is this so incredibly effective? Because your default mode network physically cannot process all that intense, real-time sensory data and run its imaginary disaster simulations at the exact same time. It's too much data. You are literally forcing the system to reboot.
By pulling all of your attention forcefully back into the physical present, you are sending a deeply necessary calming message straight to your nervous system. You're basically looking at your brilliant, exhausted, overprotective brain and telling it, hey, we're safe now. No one is chasing us. The danger is past. Again, this overthinking, it is not a character flaw.
It just means you have a mind with incredible processing power that learned to stay on high alert in a world that once felt really unpredictable. Your only job now is to become a kinder, gentler guide for that amazing mind.
Now, understanding the mechanics of your mind isn't going to just magically erase every struggle overnight, but simply naming the problem, that strips away so much of its power over you. So I want to leave you with a question to chew on. The very next time you find yourself staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., ask yourself this: are you reflecting or are you just brooding? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep living in the present and keep exploring the fascinating depths of your own mind.